Welcome to the Vault Excel. Thank you for your time. Um, we're going to talk about Sean Finnegan, Tennessee versus Sean Finnegan. The trial will resume tomorrow morning in Clinton, Tennessee. We're going to go over the past 2 days, yesterday and today's events. Please check the YouTube queue for my earlier live stream. Yesterday's live, uh, some people say day two, some say day three. I always think you count the day that you start the trial, but some people consider the day that they do the jury selection. So it's up to you. So we're just going to go over Wednesday's events and today's events during the live stream. So let's start back from yesterday evening, and I'm going to recap things I didn't say in the live last night pertaining to conversations with Miss Mahogany Peacoat and testimony from law officials when they got to the scene and their intervention into the case. WBIR News is the source. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Big Angie 129 Cash App.
An Oak Ridge man is on trial for his life. And a quick warning here about this case. The details are gruesome. The defendant is accused of kidnapping, raping, torturing, and murdering a Knoxville woman named Jennifer Paxton. Prosecutors say Sean Finnegan killed the woman and then kept her body in a freezer in his home for 8 months.
10 News reporter Ellis Roll joins us once again live in Anderson County. We're tracking this story, and jurors saw more evidence in this case today, including that freezer, Ellis.
John, Brittany, yes, the jury was actually dismissed just a bit ago. Now, this morning we heard from several of Finnegan's neighbors, but this afternoon actually focused on a lot of the physical evidence that was found at his home. We heard from officers from the Oak Ridge Police Department as well as the Anderson County Sheriff's Office. Now, the jury was shown that freezer that was found in Finnegan's home. They say he kept Paxton's body in there for 8 months, and several jurors actually stood up out of their seats to get a better look and peer inside. The state also introduced other pieces of physical evidence. Chains and padlocks were found in Finnegan's bedroom, as well as a choke chain and a nylon leash. Officers also found a bucket that the state says Finnegan made Paxton go to the bathroom in. The black plastic bag that the victim was found in was also shown. Now, earlier today, officers testified about finding Paxton's body under Finnegan's bed. The state says he moved her body there from the freezer after he became worried about the police.
We pulled up the mattress, and there she was. There was there was a naked woman with plastic bags covering her lower portion.
And that's just more saying. State showed evidence. Some members of the jury were visibly disturbed. One man put his hand over his mouth and looked away. Now, the last person to testify this afternoon in the trial was a TBI officer. She went through how they processed some of the evidence. The trial will continue tomorrow at 9 a.m., and we'll be back here tomorrow to keep you guys updated. John, Brittany, back to you.
Ellis, thank you so much.
That's News 10 News, local Knoxville news. This is from yesterday. We're going to talk about the witnesses. We're going to talk about the defense. This crybaby lawyer, he has to argue every point. Wanted a mistrial because of what one of the witnesses said. Oh, you can't undo what the jury has heard, blah, blah, blah. The thing that the lawyers don't understand and the judge don't understand is that we are human beings and we talk according to what we've seen and what we've heard. So when we go into court, we don't know that we are not supposed to tell the judge, the court, the jury that Peter, Paul, Dick told us something. But when you're in a court of law, you can't repeat what somebody told you. It's not allowed. So that's what all this bantering back and forth between the state and the defense has been transpiring for the past couple of days is what you can and can't say. Now, the judge, he's been very kind to the jury, to the court. He talks very slow to make his point. He had to give them instructions yesterday on this type of rhetoric or what you can't say, what witnesses can and can't say. He apologized for not explaining things, thoroughly to the jury. But that's the point. When you first pick a jury, you're supposed to go over everything that is allowed and not allowed by the defense and the state. You can't talk, fraternize with them. That was one of the points he gave yesterday. So he's a pretty good judge. I have posted pictures of him frowning because he was frowning in the beginning, opening statements when the defense was speaking, and his facial expressions were priceless. It was like he looked like he was disgusted. But when you watch the trial, you'll see he comes across, very professional. He handles his business. He explains everything thoroughly. So as you heard here from yesterday's events, witnesses testified, neighbors testified, neighbors gave their rendition of knowing of Rebecca Dishman, Mr. Finnegan, the mother, Francis, and their dealings with them, what they heard, didn't hear, what they saw, didn't see, and law officials gave their testimony of their involvement in the case. I'm going to read you a little bit of information to give you a synopsis of the rundown of yesterday, and then we're going to go into today's events, which was very, very brutal. Court has has ended today early. They will resume tomorrow, but they got to see graphic photographs of the victim. They got to see the dummy put up. Graphic photographs. Oh, excuse me. Hold on a second. Turn this down. Okay. They got to see the dummy, which is the medical examiner putting pins in all the places that she had bruises and lacerations on her body, and then they were able to see the actual photographs of the victim. The judge warned people if they could not handle seeing the photographs that they would need to, not return back to court, because they did a break before showing the photographs, and her family did not return back into the courtroom when they had the break. And the one thing I noticed is that during the showing of the photographs, Mr. Finnegan would not look at the photographs, which I find interesting because he's the one that kidnapped her, tortured her. Don't know the part of what Rebecca did or didn't do. But the point is, I do believe he's the one that killed her. I do believe he's the one that put her in the freezer. He ordered the freezer. I believe he did what Rebecca said. He would masturbate to the dead body frozen in the freezer. And that's what I believe. So I find it funny that you're holding this souvenir for 8 months, this human body and frozen. But now when they show the pictures, he doesn't want to look. Now he's looked at everybody, whispered things to his lawyer for the past couple of days. He's looking over his shoulder. He's looking at this person, staring at this person. He's looked at everything in the court for the past couple of days. But the day they showed the damn photographs of Jennifer's body, which was today, now he's looking down at his desk. He's looking down at the paper. Why you can't look at her? Yeah. You can't look at her because you didn't want to look at your handiwork, or you didn't want the court to see you looking and possibly becoming excited by the victim's photographs. What is the truth? And I was so appalled yesterday at listening to the testimony from the young lady who lived next door on the Inn apartment. I do believe that's the lady I spoke to a few years ago, because I couldn't remember what she looked like. It's been years ago. Usually I'm pretty good with faces, but when she was in court, I couldn't remember if that was her. But once she started talking about living next door, and she said something that was eerily similar to what she said to me the day I filmed that video of the house, she is that person. I do believe she's that person, because if she wasn't the person, whoever I was talking to would have never admitted to living next door when I filmed that video of the house. Feel free to go into the YouTube queue and my community page to watch the video of the house. I take you to the front of the house, the back of the house, and we're going to chop up all that information after I read this article of the witnesses' testimonies. Thank you for joining me. And Jordan Childs has decided to speak publicly about returning her bronze medal. I'll do a video on that sometime later. Also, there have been some people charged in the death of Matthew Perry. Okay. Yeah, there's a few things I haven't shown. Okay, let's see. Another video about evidence found. Okay, I'm going to go over the latest. That freezer was brought into the courthouse Wednesday and put directly in front of jurors. The prosecution opened the freezer and allowed them to look inside. Several jurors actually stood up out of their seats and peered into it. Prosecution introduced several other pieces of evidence Wednesday, showing the jury metal chains, dog collars, padlocks they say Finnegan used on Paxton. Prosecution also showed bed sheets found under the bed in Finnegan's room, as well as a black plastic bag that the state said Finnegan wrapped the victim's body in. Throughout the afternoon, several officers from the Oak Ridge Police Department and Anderson County Sheriff's Office took the stand. Marvell Moore with the ORPD's Criminal Investigations Unit described finding Paxton's body under Finnegan's bed during a search for his house. ORPD had obtained a search warrant for Finnegan's house in August of 2020 after Finnegan's then-girlfriend Rebecca Dishman told police there was a body in a freezer inside their home. Moore said he went upstairs to the master bedroom during the search, found a freezer in the closet. When he opened it, it contained Red Baron pizza boxes and some burritos. The room was spotless, which he found suspicious, he said. He turned around, could see something under the bed. Moore leaned down and put his hand under the bed and felt something solid, ice cold. That's when he called for officers and alerted them that he might have found a body. Moore said Paxton was wrapped in a black plastic bag and seemed to be in the fetal position. The plastic bag covered her lower body, but her upper body was exposed. Moore said Paxton's nose was missing. Dishman testified Tuesday that Finnegan cut off Paxton's nose after the killing. While being shown the evidence, several members of the jury were visibly disturbed. Some looked away, and one man covered his mouth and winced. Earlier Wednesday morning, several of Finnegan and Dishman's neighbors at the time of the murder testified. Their immediate neighbor testified that she heard a commotion around Christmas time in 2019, like a fight. This is the girl on the end apartment who I do believe is the one that I spoke to, who was still living in the apartment at the time that I did the video. And I was very disgusted with her demeanor in court. And I will say that, and I don't care if she knows I'm saying this during this live stream. You're just about as ignorant as they are. And you're just like them to me. And I'm going to say that during this live stream, because this is the very reason why we have a dead person that we're talking about right now. And I get it. People don't like to get involved and, bang on doors and call the police. But this lady could have possibly been saved had somebody decided to bang on a door, bang on a window, call the landlord to say, hey, this has been going on. I got a baby I'm trying to put to sleep. Who's to say? We will never know because nobody said anything. She then said she could hear noises coming from Finnegan's upstairs bedroom, a bed hitting the wall as if people were having sex. This lasted for several days, she said. But in the defense's cross-examination, attorney Kit Rogers questioned why she wouldn't have called police if she had heard such a loud commotion next door. The witness said she thought it was a dispute between Dishman and Finnegan and that it wasn't her business. And that's exactly what she said. It's none of my business. Very cold. No more cold than the testimony from Dishman, flat, and the cold, dead eyes of Sean Finnegan sitting in the courtroom. I said that. The state also called Mahogany Pico to the stand, who was also a neighbor of Dishman and Finnegan at the time. Pico said she and Dishman had become friends, and she eventually saw Dishman with bruises on her. Pico said she asked Dishman if Finnegan was abusing her. Dishman said yes. Pico and her husband arranged for Dishman to go to a women's shelter in Claiborne County. I just threw that part in. Pico and Dishman told her that Finnegan had forced her to perform sexual acts with children they had looked after in the past. Oh, missed that part. That Finnegan had wanted to kidnap someone else, a teenager, and that there was a body in their freezer. So this is newer information I had not heard. So I had been asking everyone about the children and that charge she caught, the 50 extra years onto her life sentence last year. It is because of this charge here pertaining to the children. So now we know that they babysat some kids. This is disturbing information. And everybody around them should feel fucked up right now because you were talking to these people, dealing with these people. Miss Peacock, you were going in their apartment. You were letting Miss Dishman come into your house, and you have children, 2 children. You testified that you have 2 kids, and now you know that she was molesting kids. This is why I tell people you don't know people. When you're talking to people, smoking with people, passing a blunt, a joint, a drink, sitting on front steps, getting in people's cars, do you know who you're talking to? Do you know who you're dealing with? No, you don't. And this story is proof in the pudding. Once again, Pico said Dishman told her that Finnegan had forced her to perform sexual acts with children they had looked after in the past, that Finnegan had wanted to kidnap someone else, a teenager, and that there was a body in the freezer. Pico told her husband, Cope, who called police. The husband also testified after Finnegan found out that Dishman had left to go to a shelter Colt Peacock said Finnegan came to his house and threatened to kill him. During a cross-examination, ORPD patrolman who responded to Peacock's call to police, the defense pointed out that in the audio recording of the police response, Colt Peacock doesn't tell officers that Finnegan had threatened to kill him. So they go back and forth in court about that. The defense is like, well, you didn't say this, you didn't say that. Same thing with the witness next door. He was arguing with her about what she said to the police and what she admitted in court. So basically what she was telling everybody was, just because I didn't repeat to the police everything I heard doesn't mean it didn't happen. She's already told you she didn't want to get in her business. So if she didn't want to get in her business, she's not going to tell the police everything. But I can tell you that what she said to me that day about the banging on the wall, that's exactly what she said in court. That's exactly what she said. That there was banging. Because I asked her. I said, well, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you bang back? Why didn't you knock on the door? Why didn't you say something? Now we know she had children, a child. You're not going to knock on somebody's door to say, hey, keep it down. I got a kid over here. I got to put my baby to bed. Hey, you're disturbing me. Kid or no kid. Man, it's just ridiculous to me. But everybody's not the same. So let me not be judgmental. Some of you don't mind putting up with noise and bullshit. But then you go cry to people later. Oh, I can't put my baby to sleep. Oh, I can't study. Oh, I can't get a night's rest. Well, maybe you should say something. But we also know that when you say something, it leads to other shit. So that's probably why maybe she didn't want to. She didn't want to cause any problems with Mr. Finnegan and Miss Dishman. I don't know. It's just, this is a bunch of bull. All right. So we got Mr. Finnegan going over to the Peacock's house and threatening to kill him. And the defense is saying, oh, you never told us that before. You didn't tell the police that. On the audio recording, Peacock did, however, tell the officer that Finnegan had threatened him. Trial resumes once again Thursday, which is today. We've already had court. This is Channel 10 News. Let's talk about this information pertaining to Miss Peacock, very pretty black lady that testified on the stand, biracial couple. Her husband is white. And he also testified. Miss Peacock was friends with Sean. They used to smoke weed together. She admitted that in court. Her husband also admitted that he didn't smoke weed. He moved here from the city, Chicago, and he was trying to straighten his life out, so he didn't do drugs, and he made sure to let the defense know that. Hey, it ain't me that smoke, it's my wife. So the defense apologized. Oh, sorry about that. And I'm glad he cleared it up. But now everybody knows you all smoke weed. Your wife smokes anyway. Just saying. So now your business is on Front Street. So she would go over to Finnegan's house to smoke weed. She stayed about 30. Her behavior, childlike, dressing up for Halloween, taking her trick-or-treating. She didn't like the drive. We also learned in testimony she had her car. It was registered in her, I think, her uncle's name. So that short I did about the car, well, it was Dishman's car, Rebecca Dishman's car. Childlike behavior. The husband says the same. She acted like a child. She acted simple. I don't think he knew the appropriate word to use to describe her, so that was his terminology, simple. She would get excited over things that his child would get excited over. He felt like she needed more care for herself. The wife says the same thing, mahogany. There were certain things she just could not do for herself. So we're dealing with someone who may possibly be developmentally slow. So would that factor in to why she went along with being abused sexually, mentally, physically by Mr. Sean, and also engage in threesomes, sex with other women, molesting children? She did whatever he said do. So this is all disturbing because now we're going from abusing adults to abusing children. We also learned that other women were coming to the house. Their names have been mentioned in open court. I have not remembered their names because I'll mention them another day. But the point is, what's baffling about all of this information is that those other two women were coming and going, I think, before Dishman came. But then we also learned that Dishman had interactions with them sexually. So where I'm confused is what made Sean pick Jennifer to kidnap and assault, torture, and then murder. Because we have two other women who were coming to the house at some point, interacting with him, have not heard that he tried to kidnap them, abuse them, torture them. So what was it about abusing Rebecca abusing Jennifer Paxton? Could it be that he knew he could be linked to the other two women because maybe other neighbors knew of them and heard their names, because they were asked that in court that they know the other two women, and Miss Peacock said that she had known of the Mahogany. So maybe he chose Jennifer because Jennifer came from another county, which is Knoxville, and decided, I'll choose somebody out of the area that don't nobody know, and then I can have my way with her in the apartment and nobody will know that she's dead in this freezer, blah, blah, blah. I'm just trying to put some rationale behind the motive. Now that I know that other women were also going to the house, he let people come there to sleep, crash, they got high, had sex, whatever. But what's baffling with all that is, once again, Dishman was having sex with these other two women that was admitted in court. But yet those women are alive as far as we know, because they have spoken with law officials. So why did he choose Jennifer Paxton to unalive? Why did he keep Rebecca alive? Because she held the secret, and she held it for almost a year. She held that secret for almost a year. The fact that she tells this woman, Mahogany, that she's molested a child, molested children, abused sexually with sex toys, rough sex, blah, blah, blah. You have the defense arguing this in court like it's no big deal. Well, we don't know where the bruises came from. Maybe they came from rough sex or he domestic. Who's to say? He's downplaying everything in the court pertaining to Dishman, her testimony. Basically, he's trying to say, we don't know who killed Jennifer Paxton. Well, I'm going to use deduction that the owner of the house did it, because he's the one that went and got her. She didn't have a car. She didn't have money. She didn't have food. She hung out over on Merchants. That's where he met her, somewhere in that general area, or at the job, working as a cook at the Pint House. In the Pint House, I got a bone to pick with you all as well, because you sat quiet on this story, and I never knew that he worked there. I never knew that bar existed until they had a shooting there not too long ago. Double shooting. Homicide. So you all got some bad blood and omen in the city right now. Pint House. But you sat on this story and never told anybody that he worked for you all, because I never heard it on the news one time until this case went to trial this week. You're a dive bar. You're going to stay a dive bar. Now that people know you have a child molester and a murderer and a torturer cooking people's food. How about that? Can't make this shit up. So we got Mahogany Peacock being a good friend to her, saying she acted childlike, took her to the store. She'd ride places with her. They talked, smoked weed. She let her use her phone. She was sending nasty text messages to her ex. Naturally, Rebecca erased the messages. But later, when all this came to fruition, she was read the messages. And they were very nasty, sexual texts. Her calling herself a dirty slut, all this type of stuff. She was a very overly sexed young lady. But when you see her in court, she talks very quiet, mild-mannered. She doesn't even speak loud. But that's the whole point. Everybody has another side to them. And obviously, Rebecca Dishman and Mr. Finnegan had different sides to them. And now the world knows their dirty secrets. We also learned in court that Miss Dishman threatened another inmate for having an affair with a guard that she's allegedly having an affair with. So we now got us a part 2 Susan Smith. So now that's starting to show me her mindset. So we're going from somebody underdeveloped mentally to somebody now making threats to inmates over affairs with guards. But maybe she feels like, I don't have anything to fight for, nothing to lose, because I'm never coming out of here. So this is all I got. It's to flirt with personnel, try to have some sexual acts in prison, jail, because I ain't going anywhere. Feel free to use your discretion on this information. Oh my God, I'm out of breath. Where was I? Mahogany tried to be a friend. But look what happened. Imagine deciding to say, well, are you ready to leave him? She says, yes. She packs up all her clothes, 4 bags of clothes, 2 tubs to go to a shelter. It's the only place the husband could find an opening. And on the way to the shelter, Rebecca tells her these dirty secrets: sex toys, child molestation. How can the world you sit and tell another human being that you molested children? Whether you were coerced or not, it's a bad look. It's a terrible look. It's a horrific look. Was she sexually molested as a child, physically, sexually, verbally abused by her parents who are no longer alive? Her parents both died at 18. Don't know why. Happened, overdose, natural causes. Find it strange. Same thing with Mr. Sean Finnegan. His penchant for abusing women, corpses, that comes from somewhere. And that doesn't happen overnight at 40-something years of age. Did his mother, Miss Francis, abuse him, or her husband, or step-parent, guardian? Because usually people who like to dilly-dally and torture, they were physically abused as children, had some fascination with abuse. They usually abuse animals, set fires. We've heard this 1,000 times with serial killers, rapists, child molesters, where both of them abused as children. We also learned that he has a 6th grade education, and I won't doubt that Miss Rebecca has some type of mental defect herself. She seems to be mentally slow. But did she know right from wrong? For a quick minute, I could have felt sorry for her. Listening to her speak in court yesterday, I said there's something wrong with this young lady, but I can't deny what she has done to Jennifer Paxton. I can never deny that. Please check out my content on my community page where somebody has found one of my older videos, because I've got 3,000 plus, so I can't keep up with all my content. But I want to thank the young lady who found one of my older videos pertaining to an older allegation against Sean Finnegan, where he kidnapped a woman in Blount County. Pardon me for saying she had a son, she had a daughter. She talked her way out of that house, and later she got a ride from Sean. He gave her a ride back to Knoxville. Blount County has no record of this kidnapping, but Knoxville verifies she was bruised up, banged up from Sean Finnegan. That was 2015. Fast forward to December 2020, or December 19, 4 years later, he brings Paxton to his home, and she never escapes. The neighbor, Kelsey. Let me talk to you for a second, because you need somebody to talk to you. What the hell was your problem? Living next door to these people, crying in court that you don't like to get involved with things, you don't want to discuss things, you don't want to get in people's business, so on and so forth. Well, there's a woman dead now. So all that banging and slamming you heard with the bed hitting the wall, them having rough sex, hard sex, whatever, that's their business, but it still was disturbing you. You had a child. Why were you not concerned for your own peace of mind? I'm curious. Why not? You were just as bland and dead in court testifying yesterday. I thought that about your testimony. You seem to be oblivious to the world as well. It's none of my business. You also said you thought she exaggerated about being abused by Sean Finnegan. That's what you said about Rebecca Dishman. Well, we now know that she wasn't exaggerating. Now, the defense will say, how do we know it was abuse? Could be from rough sex. She has bruises on her. Well, my thing is, who wants to have bruises from any type of abuse or hard sex? Maybe some people think that's cute to walk around with ligature marks around their neck from being choked during sex. That's your choice, not my choice. Bruises on your arm, your face, your back from rough sex. How's that appealing? To each its own. But nonetheless, you testified in court, Ms. Kelsey, that, well, it's none of my business what was going on over there. No, I didn't complain. No, I never called the police. No, I never called the landlord. Oh, yeah, I thought Rebecca exaggerated about being abused. Well, you see where she is now. Now we have to ask ourselves, what would you do the next time you heard banging, slamming, cussing, fussing, heard somebody arguing, slamming to the floor? The noise went from the living room to the kitchen, back to the living room. And while you were saying all those things in court, that is damn near verbatim to how Miss Dishman laid out the argument that transpired between Finnegan and Paxton. Imagine that. It's identical. Rebecca tells us she went to take a shower. The victim took a shower, came down, made breakfast, eating in the kitchen. Sean says, hey, I want to show you something. Shows her a bat, starts beating her in the head with a bat. She runs into the living room. She picks up a fire screen to ward him off. So that was probably the noise that Kelsey heard that morning. Imagine that. And never once banged on the wall, knocked on the wall, called the police or nothing. See, we don't really know the time frame of how many days Paxton was there. I don't know. It goes from 3 days to a week to a month. I'm not sure. One person told me they heard a scream around Christmas. Was it this young lady? I don't know. Was it Rebecca? I don't know. But this person, they didn't talk. They didn't testify. I didn't see them in court. Didn't see the nosy ass neighbor that knows everybody else's business in Oak Ridge. Didn't see her in there testifying about how he was a nice guy. Isn't that what you told Queen? Oh, I ain't have a problem out of him. He was nice to me. Well, he's not a nice guy. We also learned they had 2 big dogs. Well, where were they at? So imagine taking dog collars off of dogs to put on a human to choke them out and play sex games. They showed that in court. Nylon dog chains, metal chains, locks used to keep Miss Paxton in line, tied to a bed, Sean Finnegan's bed. A lot of information. Finnegan threatening Mr. Peacoat, Mahogany's husband, Coat, threatening him, telling him he should have gotten their business. He ain't got no dead body in his house. That's also what he told the police. Watching them from his back door, trying to see what was going on. Went around the front of the house when the police came. Who does this? Only a fool. They called the police because of what was told to them by Rebecca on the day she decided to leave to go to the shelter. If you're stupid enough to run home, guess your mother called and told you she had left because we hear the mother was yelling out the window. Now, allegedly, they testified today in court. She was in hospice, verified she was in hospice. She took a lot of painkillers, blah, blah, blah. But she knew how to yell and holler and scream and go down the stairs and get meds and know how to yell out of a window. So she was so sickly. Interesting. I'm calling Sean to tell him you're leaving. Good, call him. Sean shows up in a hurry, acting like he's so in love with Rebecca. Then he's arguing with Colt, telling him to stay out of his business. He ruined his life. And of course, the defense couldn't wait to throw that in there. Basically trying to insinuate Rebecca was there to take care of his mother. Also trying to insinuate that the other 2 women that were coming and going a year or so before, they were there to take care of Miss Francis. But they didn't stay now, did they? Because that's not why they were there. That wasn't the reason that any of those women were there. They were there for sexual games, toys, puppets, and to get high on drugs. They were not there for Miss Francis. So, Mr. Defense Attorney, you ought to be ashamed of yourself trying to insinuate that's why these people were there, why these women were running in and out of Sean Finnegan's home. And that's one thing you don't hear mention of either in the testimony. Where were the hospice workers? Where were the caregivers for Miss Francis? I hear no mention of anybody coming or going as a caregiver. And the reason why I know Rebecca wasn't a caregiver or hired to be a caregiver, because she testified in court that she really didn't talk to Miss Francis. And she didn't have an opinion about her either way, good or bad. So what would that tell you about her relationship with Miss Francis? There wasn't one. So I don't think she was there to take care of her. So the defense, you need to stop trying to make the jury believe these women were in and out of this house to take care of Francis Finnegan, who is now no longer alive. Imagine that. Went to live with her sister, her daughter. She's no longer alive. So far, Mr. Finnegan does not have a support system. 3 or so women were sitting in the back court today. Don't know their relationships with him, but his side was basically empty compared to the prosecution side that held the family, law enforcement, and reporters. So we've talked about Mahogany being a good friend, giving them Thanksgiving dinners, 2 plates. They came over to the house and got plates, Thanksgiving dinner. Mr. Peacock liked to stay to himself. His wife's a social butterfly. He's not. He likes to mind his own business. He probably regrets ever getting involved with Sean Finnegan or his wife getting involved. That was relayed in court that really she was the friend of Mr. Sean more than Rebecca, blah, blah, blah. You're entitled to think what you want. The point is, it's water under the bridge. There's a dead woman now. So it really don't matter who was friends with whom, who was smoking weed with whom. There's somebody dead. And the point is, nobody in this story knew each other. We now learn that they have molested children, sexually assaulted a woman, raped a woman. They've had threesomes with different people, and there's a woman dead. Can't go back. Sick mother was staying in the house, who now we know heard everything. Let's talk about Miss Francis. Miss Francis, you're no longer alive. But you held the secret to what went on in that house, because there's no way, after what Dishman testified to in court, you could not have heard all the sex acts, the beating of Miss Paxton, the beating of Rebecca, putting her in a cage, collar around her, rough sex, the rape of Miss Paxton. There's no way you didn't hear all that going on upstairs, because your bedroom was up there with Mr. Finnegan's. So you heard every sex act, scream, holler, the fighting of Miss Paxton downstairs. That's why you were coming downstairs to get your meds, allegedly. Oh, no, you weren't coming to get your meds. You were coming to see what the hell was going on in that living room and that kitchen. I'm not stupid. Queen is no dodo bird. That's what Rebecca said. She was coming down and Sean told me to go get mother. Make sure she stays upstairs. Yeah, because she heard all that slamming and damming and around, banging around down there. So that means the neighbor heard it. Miss Finnegan heard it. Checkmate. So what about the neighbor next door? Was there nobody living in an apartment right next door that shared a porch with Sean Finnegan? Because I haven't heard anything about that neighbor, and I haven't heard anything about the neighbor on the other end. Very interesting. Why didn't she drive her car that was there? Mahogany says she didn't know if she could drive or not, but she did have a car. She came with a car. We also know it's registered in her uncle's name, if I'm not mistaken. So why, one, was that car registered in the relative's name, and why wasn't she driving? Why was she always getting in the car with Mahogany? Why would she not drive? You brought a car if it was running. Why not leave in it? My understanding, I think it was running, so why not? I think Sean had a car. It wasn't running. So how was he getting to work? How was he getting to work from Oak Ridge to North Knoxville? Lots of questions. And why would this woman have a car and not try to drive it? Whether it ran or not, get it fixed. We also learned she was still talking to other ex-boyfriends. Illicit talk using Mahogany's phone. Explicit talk, sex talk. She also was doing sex talk with Sean Finnegan on the phones. Sean didn't want her to have a phone. That's why he didn't want her going over to Mahogany's house, because he knew that she was using the phone over there, and that's what Sean was more concerned with. Rebecca having outside influences and fraternizing with other men. I think she was childlike. I think she was immature. I think she was unhappy with Sean Finnegan, but she didn't have nowhere else to go. She probably was talking to other people to try to find somewhere else to go, but nobody else would take her in. We learned that Mahogany reached out to 2 of her relatives, and she got no her hands of her uncle and aunt. And that's how she ended up moving from place to place to place to place, and then ending up with Sean Finnegan. I still don't understand why and how they hooked up on Facebook. It's a mystery to me. We learned that she had 5 fiancés. She stayed with 3 of them. One of them she was trying to interact with. She was interacting with via a phone. Mahogany ended up giving her a separate phone to keep so she could make phone calls. Very interesting. But we did learn in court she erased those nasty text messages she was sending to men. So Mahogany had no knowledge of those messages until the phone was seized and the data was retrieved from the phone. And basically, the defense played that up to say, well, see, you don't know people, what they're doing and not doing. Basically trying to say, who's to say that Rebecca's not the one that did all of this torturing and unaliving of Miss Paxton while Sean was gone to work in the evenings to the wee hours. Come on now, Mr. Defense Attorney. We know that Miss Paxton was his play toy, because in the end, he went and got her and brought her to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So I refuse to believe this is all Rebecca's doing, because Rebecca testified in court. I didn't know who she was, and I didn't know why she was there. I believe her. Whether she liked women or not, whether she only got down with women because of Sean, I believe her when she said she didn't know her and didn't know that she was coming to the house to stay. Did he intentionally invite Jennifer Paxton to the house to kidnap and torture her and then unalive her? A lot of disturbing things were told in court today pertaining to the victim's body. Terrible. Terrible. WBIR is my other source. This is the kind of thing people write books about. First witness testifying death penalty, trial, abduction, rape, murder of Knoxville woman. The jury heard graphic details, torture, killing of a Knoxville woman. Once again, Sean Finnegan accused of kidnapping, raping 35-year-old Jennifer Paxton in Oak Ridge, 2019. 5 witnesses took the stand. Dishman was one of them. Once again, she was 21 years of age at the time. She's a witness for the state. She's already testified, accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty for the murder. There's no denying something horrible happened. Something horrible, defense attorney Kit Rogers said in the opening statement. There's a reason why there are cameras in the courtroom and the media's here, y'all. It's because this is the kind of thing that people podcast about. I assume there are some podcasters here. This is the kind of thing people write books about, right? Because it's fantastic. It's sensational. You've got a body in the freezer. I mean, it's got all the hallmarks of a movie, doesn't it? The gruesome nature of the case is one element the defense and prosecution can both agree on. Where they differ is about what co-defendant Dishman's role was in the killing. She has what is a BDSM relationship with Sean Finnegan, says Sarah Keith, assistant district attorney, in her opening. If you're not familiar with that term, it's bondage, dominance, submission, sadomasochism. It is a master-servant sort of relationship. Keith called Dishman to the stand and asked questions about her relationship with Finnegan. So I'm backtracking right now, everybody. I knew it would be kinky sex, but I didn't think it'd be violent as it was, Dishman testified. Dishman says she was there when Finnegan brought home Paxton, who witnesses say was working in prostitution to fund a drug addiction. She was also there when Finnegan tormented and abused her, she testified. As I walked in, Finnegan was straddled over Paxton, strangling her with a shoestring and told me to help her. Dishman said in the answer to questions from the state, and I just shut down, sat on the bed and just gave up, essentially. How long did this go on? Keith asked. 4 hours, Dishman responded. Do you believe this testimony from Rebecca Dishman, that she did not participate in the murder and torture of Miss Paxton, that she gave up when she saw him strangling her and just sat on the bed? What was her actual role in the torture and unaliving of Miss Paxton? Once again, she told the state that this went on for hours. And you heard her telling the court he would choke her, let her go. Choke her, let her go. That kind of goes to what the medical examiner testified today in court of the ligature marks around her neck. She will agree that allegedly a shoestring was used to choke the lady out. And that would make sense if the string wasn't wide enough, long enough to just continuously choke the lady out to death. So what Dishman has said coincides to me with what the medical examiner testified today in court about overlapping of the ligature marks. A shoestring is small, so you're trying to tie it around a person's neck tight enough. And she said something was pulled tight around the back. where the person, I guess, would have been behind with their hands pulling tightly on her neck. But I think it went just like what Dishman said. He would do some, then stop. Do more, stop. Take a smoke break, start again. This is what she said, if you believe her testimony. Before she was killed, Dishman testified that Finnegan hit Paxton with a baseball bat while she screamed. Then she says the two took her up to the bedroom, where Finnegan zip-tied and handcuffed her to the bed and forced her to perform oral sex. Why did he have locks and padlocks? Did he buy them before bringing Jennifer Paxton to the house? Were those padlocks and items changed there before, or were they changed he used for the dogs and decided to use them on Rebecca and Miss Paxton? Once again, he hit Paxton with a baseball bat while she screamed. Then she says the two took her up to the bedroom, where Finnegan zip-tied, handcuffed her to the bed, forced her to perform oral sex. Dishman testified she was home with Paxton almost every day, while she says Finnegan went to work from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. at the Pint House. And the Pint House is here in Knoxville. Dishman testified she unsuccessfully tried to let Paxton go once, but never tried telling police because at the time I wasn't thinking rationally, she said. Fear overtook everything, Dishman continued. With the defense, Rogers argues that Dishman was not powerless. She was not trapped at the house, Rogers said in his opening. That's where she lived because he housed her and fed her and provided her a phone and probably glasses and probably food and probably every other thing because she didn't have a job. The defense says Dishman was jealous Finnegan had brought Paxton home and took part in the killing. In cross-examination, the defense attacked her credibility. So what is her actual role in the killing of Miss Paxton? Did she help Finnegan kill her, help torture her? Because in court today, all her bruises and marks were identified, and some were during her being alive, and a lot were after death. And we will talk about that here shortly, what the body looked like. Now, the defense wants to portray it as if she was being taken care of so well by this man and had rough sex with him. That's why she had bruises. But yet he's the same one that broke her glasses and blacked her eye. That's her testimony to her friend Mahogany. But the defense will say, well, we don't know if he really hit her, how she broke her glasses, so on and so forth. So much for love. Was she jealous of Finnegan? Was Dishman jealous of Miss Paxton? Coming in, did she hurt her because she didn't want another woman coming in, or she thought maybe he liked her more? What's the truth? Don't know. Today you said something about Sean burning you with a torch. In any of your interviews prior, you never mentioned anything about a torch, did you? Rogers questioned. No, she responded. Okay, Rogers counted. And then you also talked about him cutting you with a box cutter. In any of your other interviews, you never mentioned anything about a box cutter, have you? No, Dishman repeated. Now, this is where she claims he cut her on her inner thighs. I do believe it was mentioned that she was a cutter, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe he took advantage of that. And then he cut her maybe in the inner thighs so nobody could see the cuts on the outside arms, things like that. The defense also brought up Dishman's prior interest in Satanism, as well as an incident in jail where Dishman threatened another inmate. The defense says Dishman was jealous of the other inmate who was talking to a corrections officer Dishman was allegedly in a relationship with. In questioning from the state, Dishman testified her parents died when she was a high school senior in 2016. After that, Dishman said she lived with several different people, including 3 of her 5 fiancés. What happened to her parents? How did they die? What happened at the aunt and uncle's house for them not to want her there anymore? Is this woman mentally undeveloped? Was she sleeping with a corrections officer or having some type of affair? Is it a man or is it a woman? Just asking. And did she threaten another inmate over this corrections officer? And what happened to the correction officer? Lots of questions. Eventually, in 2019, Dishman said she met Finnegan on Facebook and moved in with him after 2 weeks. You will see from the proof that Rebecca Dishman was a participant at the bequest of Mr. Finnegan, the state said in the opening. You will see that she was controlled, and eventually her dynamic with Mr. Finnegan changed from this is something I'm an active participant in to the point that she felt she needed to get out. Dishman testified that eventually she told police about the murder about 8 months later. Four of the witnesses also testified. Two, Paxton's aunt and cousin shared about the relationship with the victim. She just made people laugh. Brittany Payne said about her cousin, who she likened to as a sister, did whatever she could to make people happy. Payne's mother also testified, sharing that Paxton had 7 children who had been taken away by the state because Paxton's battled with addiction once she no longer had custody of her kids. Both Brittany and Beverly Payne testified that Paxton's addiction got worse. Matthew Johnston with Oak Ridge Police Department also testified to verify the 911 call that was played for the jury. In it, the jury heard a neighbor call police to report a body in a freezer at Finnegan's house. A neighbor also testified at the end of the day, Tuesday. Court resumes Wednesday at 9 a.m., and that was yesterday's commentary for those who testified in court. So we have neighbors who testified: Mahogany, her husband Colt, Kelsey, who lived next door in the 1-bedroom that's on the end apartment closest to the street. Same person I believe I talked to, asking her why she never complained. She didn't want to get involved because it was none of her business. Well, you see what happens now when you don't speak up, because the woman's life could have been changed. It's not to say they couldn't have still drug her upstairs while this lady was beating on the door and still held her hostage in there, but we will never know. And all Rebecca had to do was just call 911 to say, I can't get this lady out the padlocks. Could you please send somebody here to help us both? Imagine the fear on Jennifer's face when the bat came down on her head and she realized her life was in mortal danger. And she had to fight for her life in this apartment at 318 East Fairview Road. Small town, nuclear town. The town that built the first atomic bomb, if you did not know. Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Trying to protect herself with a fire screen. Using it as a shield, as not to get beat by a baseball bat. But she won. She did not win the battle, because they ended up taking her upstairs to padlock her to chains in a bed, torture her, rape her, and then eventually unalive her. You also heard that her nose was removed after death. Tattoos were removed, skin sliced in different places, all over her body. Cuts, bruises, defense marks, cuts to the head. All that was mentioned in court today. A dummy was presented in court today to show you all the wounds made by Sean Finnegan and maybe possibly Miss Dishman as well. It's a very disturbing synopsis pertaining to this lady. It's a terrible, terrible situation. Let me read you something from a former case, and then we'll go back to today's testimony. Please check out my content. I have an extensive library of content pertaining to breaking news, trying to find this video where I played his previous charge. What happened with previous rape charge against Sean Finnegan? This is older content where I was under the name of Everyday Shenanigans.
Into the woman who was found in the freezer, stored in the freezer, and later discovered under a bed in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. If you need verification for the storyline, please log on to WATE 6 News. What happened with previous rape charge against suspect in gruesome Oak Ridge murder? The following story is graphic in nature, and readers' discretion is advised. A $1 million bond has been set for both suspects in a gruesome Oak Ridge murder. Sean Finnegan and Rebecca Dishman, two face multiple charges against, including murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. Arrest warrants say Finnegan and Dishman lured a 36-year-old Jennifer Paxton into their home in December 2019, promising a place to stay. Documents say she was held against her will, beat, with a baseball bat, raped, and strangled. They also report her body was stuffed in a freezer with parts removed. The report obtained Monday shows on January 28, 2015, that Knoxville police officers responded to a report of kidnapping. Their report also includes the victim reporting to law enforcement. She was taken from a home in Knoxville to a home in Louisville, and this is in a county outside, Blount County, outside of Knoxville. Okay, not too far away from Knoxville city limits. The report also noted abrasions, bruises, and other injuries on the woman. The victim was able to get away from Finnegan by convincing him to bring her back to Knoxville to pick up her 11-year-old daughter, according to the report. Ultimately, the reported noted investigators in Blount County were notified. In January 2015, we reported Finnegan was charged with aggravated rape and kidnapping in Blount County. Our report cites information received from the sheriff's office. That information included a woman claiming Finnegan kidnapped her from a Knoxville home and took her to his home in Louisville for 2 days. DCSO also reported deputies finding evidence in his home that supported the victim's account of what occurred. We also confirmed those charges through TBI background checks received Friday. What happened with those charges? This is where the trail goes cold. The Blount County Circuit Court Clerk's Office was unable to find a report on the charges. A spokesperson with the Sheriff's Office say they have no record of Finnegan in their system. Knoxville Police, however, does have a report on the alleged incident. We will continue to follow this investigation. So as you see, this just corroborates what was told to me by the neighbor who lives across the wall, across the fence from Mr. Finnegan. I also didn't get this notification of the said article pertaining to this creep. He obviously raped a woman in Louisville, Tennessee, which is in Blount County, a neighboring county of Knox County. And so now Blount County is saying they don't have him in the system, but Knox County does have the alleged report of a rape. So Mr. Finnegan has been a busy bee back in 2015, kidnapping and raping a woman and holding her hostage in his home for 2 days. And now, lo and behold, December 2019, he and his girlfriend died, taking another unwilling participant. She wasn't so lucky with that. She didn't make it out alive. So, you all know I'm about to go there. Why in the hell is Mr. Finnegan free? Because 2015, not that long ago, I can count 5 years ago, why is this creep not in prison for holding that other lady in his home, raping her? Why is Mr. Finnegan free to kidnap Miss Paxton? Wait. But you see, it's like another case I think I'm going to bring of a certain person allegedly accused of raping a woman and set free on bond, and then he later goes and finds his victim and he kills her. I will bring that information to you shortly. The Queen's on the road today. I'm very disturbed already by the fact that they held her in there and abused her, cut her up, beat her with a bat, raped her, stored her in a freezer, took her out to clean her body in the shower, and hid her under the bed. Because they knew the police was coming back to investigate. But I guess they were too scared to take her out of the damn house and dispose of her outside. Come on with all that. So yes, Blount County, Louisville, Tennessee. What happened to the rape charge? Why is Mr. Finnegan, why was he free to go on and rape and kill and torture somebody else? Because you got some explaining to this. Because now, people now know you dropped the ball. You don't even have him in the system. Well, hell, maybe he's the sheriff's nephew. Yeah, I see it. We already know about the things that go on in Alcorn, Tennessee, and those parts, the worst place to go to jail. We've heard that from people who've been to jail out there, and they'll tell you don't even want to go to jail in Alcorn. Those are neighboring towns. For those of you who are not familiar with that area, also in Blount County, Tennessee, and the Queen is putting everybody on Front Street. She don't care, because we're talking about a life here. We're talking about one dead lady. We're talking about another lady who was raped and kidnapped from Knoxville and taken to Louisville, Tennessee, which is in Blount County, and now Blount County don't have a record of the rape in the system. Now this fool now sitting behind jail on a $1 million bond. Showed up. That's where he should be. He had his little puppy. I'll bring you more information into this case.
This is content I uploaded it to YouTube 4 years ago. What happened with the previous rape charge against Sean Finnegan? If you'd like to replay it again, feel free to go to YouTube Q. It's also shared to my community page. We're going to go to trial today pertaining to the wounds on Miss Paxton's body after being thawed out at the medical examiner's office. This medical examiner has been working for Knoxville since 2002. She does work for Emerson County, Knox County. There was a bickering back and forth with the defense, I guess, about her not being the one to actually perform it. But she has several people that work for her office. I don't know. I can't remember if the guy who did it no longer works there, but nonetheless, White just can't accept the findings because she admitted in court she agrees to his findings and she puts her stamp of approval on what he found during autopsy pertaining to Miss Paxton's body. And that's the end of the story. And the fact that this defense attorney wants a mistrial because of what somebody slipped up and said as a witness, he said, she said, get the hell out of here. He has been dancing around this dead body for days now in court, talking around her. And his behavior reminds me of the behavior of the attorneys for Adam Montgomery. This takes me back to the Harmony Montgomery case. And I really didn't want to even come back on to talk about this case anymore because I'm getting flashbacks of Harmony Montgomery. The running around, the lies, the drug use, the sleeping in cars, beating up babies, carrying a dead baby around for months. This is what I think of with this case. Just blatant disrespect for the living. Blatant disrespect for the dead. That's what I see at this case. I was so disgusted watching this, I cringed the whole time. But I wanted to hurry up and get this information out to you today so I won't be behind by tomorrow when court resumes tomorrow. Law and crime is the source. The public was not able to see the pictures, such as myself. The court was ordered not to take pictures, reporters, of the gruesome pictures in court. They were relayed after the display of the dummy. So there was a dummy to show pins in them where all her wounds were found before and after death. And then autopsy pictures were shown after the dummy display. But we as spectators couldn't see, but the people in the court could see. Here are the findings.
Sharp force injuries in the neural area or bleeding sized wound on the left maxilla. So there was a large area on the left maxilla, and this is the numbers that would be in this region. There was a very irregular cut. So we called it like a sliced or incised injury that pretty much involved the maxilla, part of the temple, actually even part of the eyelids, and it was very irregular. That particular wound was up to 4 inches in size and actually did not show any viral reaction. So that would be in the category of hearing.
The first pin to the dummy is up near the face. The testimony you're about to hear is where injuries were found on the body. So the first pin is going into the face. You're going to hear of lacerations done to the body and bruises on the body, defensive wounds. That is what you're listening to right now in today's testimony. Court is out, of course, but this was today's testimony.
Aortic/postnatal trauma, because her circulation is not active anymore, and possibly she's already deceased. There was actually similar injury that involved the left ear. And that part of the ear was actually absent. So there were a couple of areas that appeared like that the cutout was so large and substantial that part of the skin and subcutaneous tissue was not present. However, with the decedent, we did have several pieces of small to medium sizes skin subcutaneous tissue, and even a little bit of patch muscle that we could match some of these sliced or incised injuries in the body. Then there is an interesting injury, and that is the nose. Now, this is actually different than many other incised injuries that are recently provided because they appear to be post-mortem, there's no vital reaction, and it's a very nice, precise cut through the cartilage. So it's lower than the bone, and it's through the cartilage, and it's a beautiful, regular cut that kind of like a 10, you know, the nasal bridge is completely long. It's very regular, it almost kind of looks like a by design. But on top of...
Listen at her description. Nice cut, beautiful cut through the cartilage. He was a chef, so he worked with knives. I also saw on one of the articles, news videos, he worked at it with Swifties. That's also in Oak Ridge. I mean, it's in Oak Ridge. It was a bar. The name was changed a lot of times with different ownerships. And people are on there talking about the drugs, trafficking out of there. And a lady who commented said she worked with him and she only worked with him 1 week. She had enough. So what happened with her at Swifties in Oak Ridge for her not to like the job and work alongside Sean Finnegan? But note what this lady has said about the cut on the nose. It was precise, beautiful. And he's sitting there listening to what she's saying. Probably getting a goat and a heart on from what she's saying about the cut on the nose from the dead girl. But know that during this testimony, he pays attention to the dummy, but when the graphic pictures are shown, Sean Finnegan keeps his head down on the desk. He does not look at the photos. Why not? Go back and watch this video. Law and Crime is the source. Let's finish this.
That there was actually a couple of incised cuts that were actually subsequent to the nose being removed. So I think it's two different.
Why did he remove her nose?
Cuts here. So there were oblique diagonal deep cuts that went all the way to the bone. And then there was the incised wound that was the only, there were a couple of incised wounds of body that showed some viral reaction. This is one that was in the area of the ligature to the left of the midline. It was a relatively deep wound. It went all the way to the trachea. It did not penetrate into the trachea, but it went through all the muscle, skin, subcutaneous tissue, muscle, all the way to the trachea. And that's the wound actually that was surrounded with.
This is her neck where she was choked with a shoestring. You also hear that there was a laceration to the neck. That was, I believe, while she was living. Almost penetrated the trachea, being choked to death.
The question was, would this hemorrhage be elicited by the strangulation first, and then the wound happens? And I would say that actually she was actively bleeding and on her hands. So she was bleeding. Viral reaction around it, that's this particular incised wound on the neck. And then right below that, lower down, there's another incised wound in the lower neck, kind of slightly big abdomen.
So doctor, you're saying when those wounds are throat was slit?
So yeah, the throat was actually slit, and the size of that wound was actually over almost 2 inches. So these are the wounds that are in the head area. In the back, actually, there are several areas. I think 3 of these. There is a slicing, so slicing meaning that instead of the cut like this, we have like a tangential sliced off piece of skin. So there is the wound that is on the left upper back. So there's a slice injury on the left upper back, not far from the midline, and then there's one lower down. So there are some slice, meaning a piece of skin and subcutaneous tissue is missing. And then there is also slicing injury on the lower back, and that would be in the midline. see one of the photographs right here. There is also the slicing injury over the right gluteal region. Now, in the gluteal region right here, we can see some outline of freezer burns and abrasions, and they're partially overlapping and hiding a little bit of this injury over the right buttock area, but that's the back. And then we have left upper extremity. So the left upper extremity, actually, we have a very large area on the shoulder that is it is a cutout, and it didn't show any body reaction. And then similar to that, actually right below that, there was a larger area. And that larger area was very irregular. I call those areas of cutouts and sliced injuries with kind of geographic pattern, meaning that there's no particular regular pattern to it. It's kind of a irregular geographic pattern. This is consistent. These two injuries were consistent, and they're completely according to a post-mortem. Is with the freezer burn right in the middle of that wound, and that's actually one piece of skin that we did obtain with her body in the body pouch when she came to the office. Actually, there's kind of a slice cut out, and it came with it. There's a freezer burn in the middle, and then it's consistent with as her body was taken out of the freezer. That's when she was stuck, leaning to the left, stuck to the side of the freezer, so had to be cut out in order to take her out. So that seemed to be post-mortem at the time of extrication from the freezer. It was a large wound that's 7 inches on the side of the arm. And then the reason how we know that that piece of skin matched is because that was one of the tattoos that's there. Actually, the outline of the tattoo matched the defect. And then there were 3 oblique parallel incised wounds. Now, these are kind of interesting wounds because they're running diagonally across the forearm. They were parallel, so they almost have a pattern to them. And they were less than ½ inch apart. They're pretty long. And they appear to be, there's described as a perimortem. There's some reaction to it. So it looks like there are 3 scratches. Whenever we see something that has a viral reaction, that it's an incised wound, and actually one of the upper wounds had a defect that was like a real cut into the skin subcutaneous tissue. That is consistent with the defense injuries, so the way the individual can raise a hand to protect the face, and then that's where we find defense injuries, sharp force injuries, blunt force injuries. That's where people find them. So that's those 3 incised wounds. And then there's also a wound on the dorsal, or actually lateral. When we say on the extremity something is medial lateral, then we're talking.
So it's obvious that Miss Paxton was fighting for her life. Maybe most of these injuries were when she was down on the floor originally when he hit her with the bat in the kitchen, and then she made her way into the living room to fight him off with the fire screen. And he's hitting her while she's holding the fire screen, trying to protect herself, and she's being battered with the bat. We also know that they took her upstairs, and he probably continued abusing her up there, because we hear Rebecca saying he was, I think, kicking her or doing some things to her up there when she didn't want to perform oral sex. And then she stood in the gap, and he forced Rebecca to finish off the oral sex because Miss Paxton didn't want to participate. Why would she want to participate? You just hit her in the head with a bat. You drag her upstairs, padlock her to the bed, and want her to perform oral sex while she's probably bleeding from the head because her head was hit. She has cuts in her head. Blunt force trauma to the head. Who wants to have sex and they just got beat in the head with a damn bat? I don't think anybody wants to have sex after being beat in the head with a bat. I came here to have sex with you, get high with you. I didn't tell you I wanted to get beat with a bat. This lady was fighting for her life, and Rebecca, you did nothing. And now the only thing you can sit up and be concerned about is having affairs with the guards in the jail because you know you're not going anywhere. This is your new life for life. They're going to carry both you and Mr. Finnegan out the same way she was carried out of that house in a bag, that's the fate you're going to get in prison. A bag. You're going to die in prison. Or you'll die in a hospital affiliated with a prison. And Mr. Finnegan, you're going to get the same fate. I pray they give you the needle to the arm. And you will asphyxiate the way you asphyxiated this young lady by choking her to death.
About the ideal anatomic position of the body. So that would be medial and this would be lateral. So in this particular case, there is a superficial incised wound on the lateral aspect of the wrist dorsally. And there are slicing injuries on the dorsal surface of the hand. So there were 3 cuts on the back of the hand that appear to be perimortem, meaning that there's kind of kintoviral reaction around it, and the sharp object cut into the skin subcutaneous tissue of the left hand. And then also there is what is described as a laceration scab on the medial aspect of the elbow. So that definitely looked like a deeper cut. And it's on the inside medial aspect of the inside of the elbow, and all the skin subcutaneous tissue. And that's actually the one that did have hemorrhage around it. So that appeared to be more like an antemortem, meaning there's some circulation happening with this wound, and in the photograph, you can see that. So that would be like upper extremity. The right upper extremity had a slicing injury over the anterior aspect of the upper arm. And that's the kind of angled cut that would be in this area. And then there's a 4-inch area of a slicing injury similar to what we saw on the left shoulder and left arm. And that goes over the what we call the anterolateral aspect of the upper arm of the cervical fossa, and that is typically in ventrolateral, in this area. The sharp procedure with extremities. Now the chest is or called thorax in this situation is interesting because unlike the these injuries where most of it was kind of like a cuts and slice injury, there was injury that looked like a slicing injury over the sternum and left clavicle area. Actually, there was a cluster of those injuries that would be in this region. There is a teardrop-shaped area around the mid-chest, left of the midline. And these looked all post-mortem. So the chest looked mostly post-mortem. And then the left breast actually had, I think, the most interesting injury because unlike the rest of the injuries, had a pattern to it. What I mean by pattern, unlike, let's say, that left arm, there was a geographic slice taken out, cut out. This particular area that involved the nicola and areola, it was actually almost like a stellate. And if one would look at the margins of it, it would have almost like a pinwheel appearance. It was almost like a multiple cuts were made around it, and then finally the slice taken out. So that was the left breast area. It was
so he was cutting her left breast after death until finally the breast areola nipple was moved. Why? Why were you cutting this woman after death? Please explain to us, Mr. Finnegan. Why were you cutting on this dead woman? I find it interesting that he wasn't cutting on her while she was alive. I guess he didn't want her bleeding everywhere. If they had carpet upstairs in that bedroom, which I think they did, him cutting on her, she would have been bleeding out everywhere. And we all know that you can't clean blood off of carpet, fabric. So it's probably why he didn't cut her while torturing her and leaving her alive for a couple of days or however long she was actually alive. They wanted to continue to play funny games with her, sex games. But you had to know that this was not going to last long, her living, considering you beat her in the head with a bat. Then you're cutting on her and doing things to her, choking her back and forth. She was not going to sustain life. But that was the point, right? So you decided to play more funny games with her after death. Oh, I would just cut around the breast, cut the nipple off, cut her whole nose off. She had cuts in so many places. Her ears, her face, her nose, her neck, her breast, her chest, her back, her legs, her arms, just everywhere you think. There's nothing but red dots all over this mannequin. And then to hear that he ejaculated with her while frozen in the refrigerator, in the freezer. This is what Ms. Dishman testified. She caught him masturbating to a frozen woman. You can't make this up. And I don't think she's lying. And he may have went and cut on her frozen to make more cut marks. Because they believe one of the tattoos may have been removed while she was frozen. Don't know. And you can't tell is what was testified by the medical examiner. But the point is, it's gruesome. After death, while frozen, who cares? It's still fucked up.
Morning. There's no circulation, there's no other reaction, but there's a pattern to it. It looks like there was part of the skin with the areola, and it was cut out kind of on purpose, not just haphazardly.
Of course it was.
And then there is also numerous superficial small wounds on the rest of the breast tissue surrounding it. And there was more kind of haphazard pattern that appeared close more, and I'll just put it on the side here. And then there were.
I'm going to stop here. I want to go to my community page. Let's just give you a synopsis of what was done to the body. She had a lot of cut marks, bruises to her body, exactly before and after death. Feel free to watch the entire video that's 7 hours and 49 seconds long about Law and Crime Trial. Let's go to my community page to read the Queen's Post. Sean Finnegan. His defense argues anything that makes common sense to an average human being. He don't want to accept the medical examiner's findings because she wasn't the original one with the scalpel. What's the point of beating a dead horse about cutting victim while frozen and if the body was refroze and cut in between? If it was done, somebody did it. Gee, I wonder who that could be. Does it matter who? This man is ridiculous. Next post. Sean Finnegan won't look at his handiwork in court. Why not? He wants to look, but don't want the jurors to see him get excited. Yeah, okay. The reason why I said this is for the obvious reason. He enjoyed keeping this woman in a freezer after death. Souvenir, to go back in and look, dog, masturbate to. And we learned that Sam Little, the infamous serial killer out of California, when he was being interrogated about his victims, he could paint them by memory, and he was becoming excited in his britches to where his legs started to shake under the table, the detectives noticed, and he got an erection talking about these dead women and drawing their pictures. I won't doubt it's the same for Mr. Finnegan. He doesn't want to look at the pictures because he might become excited. And if you would masturbate to a dead person in a freezer, you would definitely get an erection from looking at the photographs of the dead woman. What's the difference? There is no difference. Ladies, please be safe in meeting and greeting men wherever. 2 hours ago. I'm watching the Sean Finnegan trial. Court is on a 15-minute break. I'm beyond words. Jennifer was tortured and fought for her life. There were a lot of post-injuries on her body. When they return, photos will be shown to the jury in court. Judge warned everyone they are very graphic. So if a person thinks they will have a reaction, best not to return. Also under here, I have pictures of him in court. He watched everybody's movement in court until the pictures were shown. He looked down at the desk. Do the math. Why did he not want to look at his handiwork, considering he kept her in a freezer for 8 months? And God knows what he was doing to that woman while frozen. And you also hear later, I won't play it, but the medical examiner will tell you she was cut out of the freezer by the arm because naturally she was stuck to the freezer. And when he realized police had come to investigate a body in the freezer, he had to get her out of the freezer. So that's when you hear he put food in the freezer and cut her out and put her under the bed with just the bags on her bottom half and her breasts, neck, face, and all that exposed underneath the bed. What made him think they weren't going to search the whole house and under the bed? Come on now. Let's get serious. And I want you to picture this freezer being hauled upstairs to a second floor bedroom apartment and put in a closet in a bedroom with a dead person inside of it. I want you to picture that because that is how Miss Paxton was disposed. Look at the photographs on my community page and look where they put the freezer. Right to the right of Mr. Finnegan and the defense table. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. Pictures of him on my community page where he's deadlocked watching everything being said and done with the mannequin and other people testifying on the witness stand, ex-co-worker, Mahogany, her husband, the neighbor, police. But as I said, when they showed the graphic photos of the victim today in court this evening, he could not look at them. He would not look at them. Once again, what happened with previous rape charge against Sean Finnegan? Uploaded 4 years ago. Please check my community page for that video. Here are the posts. Rebecca Dishman said she told 3 people before telling Mahogany about Jennifer, about being abused by Sean Finnegan and dead woman in freezer. Do you believe her? Do you believe she told Mahogany 3 times that the woman was in the freezer and that she told other people, an ex and a cousin, about the abuse and Miss Paxton's body stored in the freezer? 41% yes, 12% no, 47% of you said you're not sure. Rebecca Dishman said she told friend Mahogany that she was abused by Sean Finnegan at least 3 times. Do you believe her? 67% yes, 6% no, 28% not sure. Does Sean Finnegan's mom feel bad for not calling 911? Now, Miss Finnegan is not alive, but did she have any remorse at the time before death? 0% yes, 91% no, 9% not sure. Rebecca Dishman told the court she felt bad for Jennifer Paxton but didn't help free her. Do you believe her? 33% says yes, but she was afraid of Sean. No, 43%. Not sure, 24%. Very interesting. Why did Sean Finnegan leave Jennifer Paxton's body inside of his freezer so long? He was lazy, didn't want to dispose of her. 5%. Scared to move her. 21%. Wanted souvenir, play games. 74%. If not caught, would Sean Finnegan have left Jennifer Paxton inside of the freezer? 94% of you said yes, and 6% of you said you're not sure. Both Sean Finnegan and Rebecca Dishman appeared empty in a dead space in court. Would she have involved herself in a similar crime on her own? 21% says yes, 36% said no, 43% of you are not sure. Do you think Sean Finnegan was verbally and physically abused by his mom, dad, guardian, or step-parent? 57% yes, 7% no, 36% not sure. Do you think Sean Finnegan discussed abuse of women and murder with his mom? 21% yes, 57% no, 21% not sure. Why didn't Sean Finnegan's mom call 911 about the abuse of the women and murder? She was scared of her son, 20%. Enabler, 60%. Don't care, 20%. Oh, I meant to put another one. Not sure. Sorry about that. Do you think Sean Finnegan and Rebecca Dishman were abused as children? 57% of you said yes. 43% of you said you're not sure. Has Sean Finnegan kidnapped, abused, essayed, and or alive more women? Yes to all, 84%. Kidnap, abuse, essay, 16%. No to all, 0%. Not sure, 0%. So most of you believe he's done the same to others as he did with Miss Paxton, 84% of you. Does Sean Finnegan regret abusing Rebecca Dishman? Yes, only because he was caught, 30%. Yes, he's remorseful, 0%. No, 7%. And 0% not sure. Does Sean even have remorse for unaliving Jennifer Paxton? 100% says no. Do you think that Rebecca Dishman regrets telling neighbor about Jennifer Paxton being dead in freezer, abuse, and leaving Sean Finnegan? Yes, 64%. No, 21%. Not sure, 14%. When asked by the prosecutor if she still loves Sean Paxton, Rebecca Dishman said yes. Imagine saying yes, knowing what he has done to you and what he has done to Jennifer Paxton. And you held that lie for almost a year before leaving him, and you left his house of dungeons to then go into a prison cell. I want you all to sit and think about that for just a second. Did Rebecca Dishman participate in the sexual assault and unaliving of Jennifer Paxton? 88% yes, 6% no, 6% not sure. Do you believe Rebecca Dishman is mentally ill, has a low IQ, and was not aware of what happened to Jennifer Paxton? 13% yes, 39% no, 48% of you are not sure. Very interesting. 3 people commented. Libby says, I do think there's a mental illness, etc., but I also think she was aware of what was going on. She reminds me of those people that are kidnapped, but they stay with their offender for so long that they don't actually want to leave them if rescued. I know that the term for that doesn't fit the situation exactly, but something about her, I can't put my finger on it. She's 100% guilty and deserves to be in prison for sure, the Queen replied. Okay, it's called Stockholm Syndrome. And she replied, yes. So really, 48% of you don't know if she has a mental illness, low IQ, or aware of what she did. Very interesting. And once again, Bianca Ellis went to court this week, and she will have to have an evaluation, 20-day evaluation, to determine if she's fit to stand trial. What a story. Please check out my video of the horror house at 318 East Fairview Road, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It is shared to my community page if you're interested in seeing the place where this murder transpired. This is a very diabolical case. And it's a scary case because it shows you don't know people. Whether you are a lady of the night, a man of the night, a drug addict, alcoholic, trying to make extra money, dancer, meeting and greeting a person for the first time, you don't know people. And it does not matter where you meet the person, because I'm so tired of people talking about the internet and that people are bad on the internet. Those people are the same people that are out here talking to you. The internet is just an easier way to meet people. That is it. But the same people on the internet who message people for fraud, set up fraud, try to steal their identity, try to meet and greet, to date rape, they are the same people out here walking around. There is no difference. So people got to get out of their head. There's a special type of person that's on the internet. Everybody is on the internet. Everybody's watching the internet. If you are rogue, you are rogue. With or without the internet. If you want to go out here and sexually assault a person, drug a person, steal from somebody, you don't need the internet to do it. It is just an easier way to con, scheme, manipulate, and meet and greet. That's just the bottom line. So my message today is to be careful of the company you keep. Be careful of the people you allow in your peripheral, around you, around your children, who you let keep your child, babysit your child, people you're going on dates with, drinking with, getting high with. It's all the same. You do not know people. So you imagine all the people who have come across Sean Finnegan and Rebecca Dishman, the stories they have to tell about their demeanor, their attitude, their conversations. They're probably wide and vast. And I'm sure Mr. Finnegan's probably got a lot of negative things to say about him because one minute he's helpful, oh, he's a great guy, he lets people crash at his house, but he's getting something out of that. He got something out of that. It wasn't just he's letting them crash at his house because he's such a great guy. He's not a great guy. You don't go from allowing people to stay at your house, feeding them, to beating them up, putting dog collars around them, and have them walking around like a dog and putting them in a dog cage. That makes no sense. Cutting a dead person, cutting off a nose, cutting off a breast, cutting off a nipple. How is that a nice guy? Oh, he let people crash in his house. Oh, he gave people money. He did it for his own purposes, self-serving purposes. Had nothing to do with being nice, being a good Samaritan. He got something out the deal. And as you heard in testimony, 2 women were going in and out of there, sleeping with him at one point and her. It was for sex. It was for drugs. It wasn't because he liked them so much. They were his best friends. He was teaching them how to do arithmetic. Come on, let's be serious. He got something out of these people coming and going out of his house. That's the point. He got something out of fooling with these people that was spending the night crashing at his house. And what is so baffling is that if we're to believe the testimony in court today, that 2 different women were going in and out of there having sex with him and Rebecca, why did he choose Jennifer Paxton on that fateful day to bring her to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, to kidnap her and torture her and then unalive her and store her in a freezer for 8 months, play nasty games with a corpse until he was caught? Make it make sense. Why Jennifer Paxton? That's what I'd like to know. I want to thank you all for your time. I'll be back with more stimulating content and commentary. This was a recap of yesterday's events in court. Witnesses, police officers testified to their intervention in the case, how they came to be involved in the case, how the neighbors came to know about the case, and how they befriended Mr. Finnegan and Ms. Dishman. We heard from Colt, his wife Mahogany, Kelsey the neighbor. Co-worker testified the other day who worked at the Pine House with him. You got to hear commentary, how these people interacted with him. And now they know that they did not know him. And they did not know Rebecca Dishman either. And sadly, this will not be the last story that you're going to hear of a fatality, of abuse, stories of child molestation, sexual assault, kidnapping, rape, and murder. That's why I said you need to be careful of the company you keep, because you don't know people. And eventually you have to take the guard down and be alone with a human being. And that's the thing you always have to remember, that once the door is closed, all bets are off. That a person does not have to play fair. What they said on the phone is not what they're going to represent once you get inside the house or their car. All bets are off. And you better pray like hell that you'll be able to get out of that situation alive to tell the story. Because if not, you can most definitely become a Jennifer Paxton. Thank you for your time. You've been listening to the Vault XL.